This week's topic is about basically listening, and listening is kind of what meditation is all about. I heard this first from Mike Sifu. He said, if you think of prayer as like talking to God, then meditation is like listening to God. And you've also all heard that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and there's a reason for this. First of all, having 2 mouths would be kind of unhelpful. It's helpful to have 2 ears so you can hear stuff from different directions. I'm not a doctor, but it seems to make sense. The cute idea behind that being that you should listen at least twice as much as you talk. And I mean, look, the hours in the day, if you spent 12 hours talking, that's too much. That's like me, way too much talking. And there's always something great to listen to. And when you're talking, you're not listening by default. So I chose this topic because the question of the week is, do you listen more than you talk, or do you talk more than you listen? And the internal challenge is to be out in nature for 5 minutes or more every day. And what do those things have to do with each other? Well, being in nature, being able to connect and just basically listening, and especially if you can be in a quiet place in nature, is wonderful. We are bombarded constantly with so much noise. And I mean actual noise that you're hearing, but visual noise, all kinds of stimuli that really kind of has a tendency to take you out of the moment. And thought is noise. So in meditation, a big part of what we're trying to be able to do is listen to the noise in your head and be able to let it go and just have that silence. So I cannot overstate the importance, the utility of literally just being in a silent place, turning off your phone, turning off the TV, not just constantly listening to podcasts and whatever else is the noise that you're always used to having, just being in that silence. I used to drive an hour to get to my seafood school in Michigan, and I drove an hour there and an hour back, and I did that 3 or 4 times a week. And this was at a point where I sometimes listened to audiobooks and I really loved it, and boy, did I cruise through. I mean, I had a real epic couple of years of listening to like 50 books a year, and that was great. But then also sometimes I just didn't listen to anything, and that was the best. I mean, reading books and learning stuff is fun, but learning about yourself is better, and just being in silence really teaches you start to understand what's going on in here without all the distraction. So tonight I'm going to I'll do a few readings from 2 of my favorite books, and this will be about listening and a lot about, listening to and being in nature. So we'll start with Peace is Every Step. This is a wonderful book. You can see I got lots of sweet stuff that I've highlighted from this. If you have not read it yet, this is definitely on the list, by Thich Nhat Hanh, one of the more prolific writers about Zen Buddhism. So the first one I want to talk about is understanding. So he says, understanding and love are not 2 things but one. Suppose your son wakes up one morning and sees that it is already quite late. He decides to wake up his younger sister to give her enough time to eat breakfast before going to school. It happens that she's grouchy, and instead of saying, "Thank you for waking me up," which nobody has ever said, she says, "Shut up, leave me alone," and kicks him. This is a very Zen book. He will probably get angry, thinking, "I woke her up nicely. Why did she kick me?" He may want to go to the kitchen and tell you about it, or even kick her back. Absolutely. But then he remembers that during the night, his sister coughed a lot and realizes that she must be sick. Maybe she behaved so meanly because she has a cold. At the moment, he understands, and he is not angry at all anymore. When you understand, you cannot help but love. You cannot get angry. To develop understanding, you have to practice looking at all living beings with the eyes of compassion. When you understand, you cannot help but love. And when you love, you naturally act in a way that can relieve the suffering of people. Yeah. So I'm gonna dive into this idea of just listening and being able to understand a little bit. If we are only kind of full of our own thoughts, it's almost impossible to have that compassion, to empathize with somebody, to understand what they're going through, because we only have room for ourselves. And even when most people think they're listening, what they're really doing is just thinking about what they're going to say next. And if you really start to pay attention, you'll probably notice that this is what you're doing. At best, when you're listening, you're thinking about what you think about what that person is saying, which is better, but still not really listening. Listening is just being there and actually being totally present and being able to fully take in the words that they're saying, but also like their experience and the emotion behind it. So I heard this incredible advice. It was honestly given more as like a way for when somebody is trying to basically argue with you, when you're in an argument or they're trying to put one on you. This helps the whole thing just disappear, because listening and understanding, when the other person knows that they are being understood, it makes all of that disappear. So here's this very simple advice. You're listening to what somebody is saying. To show them that you really get it, you repeat back exactly what they said, word for word. Now, the more they talk, the more difficult this is going to be. And I'm not saying that you should interrupt them after every sentence to make sure that you get it all word for word, but to the best of your ability, you literally repeat word for word what they just said. And if you need to take notes or something, okay. And then you tell them what you believe their emotion, the experience behind it is. So just being able to say the words doesn't work. And I'll tell you this from my own experience with my wife, who has a very strong ability to take the things that I say and repeat them back to me in a way that is much more angry than how I intended it to be, to my knowledge. And I also have a great ability to do the same thing to her. So the closer you are with somebody, the more you will find that you can maybe misinterpret the emotion behind what they say. So for example, I'll say, why didn't you turn on the light? And she will think that I said, why didn't you turn on the light? And this is kind of missing some of it, right? So to be able to repeat back and actually understand and get the other person to realize that you understand the emotion behind what they're saying is great. So you can just say, like, you said, why did you turn on the light? And you were a little bit annoyed by it. And they can say, you know what? I was a little bit annoyed by it. Or they can say, no, I actually wasn't annoyed at all. I was just yelling at you because you're on the other side of the house. Oh, problem solved, argument over. Brilliant. So try that out, see how it works. The next one. So now we're getting a little bit more into nature and listening to nature. So walking meditation can be very enjoyable. Tonight we're going to do a sitting meditation, but if you can walk and meditate, that's even better. We walk slowly, alone or with friends, if possible in some beautiful place. Walking meditation is really to enjoy the walking. Walking not in order to arrive, but just to walk. Can you imagine what your life would be like, or what this entire city would be like, if people actually enjoyed getting from A to B, especially in their cars? I mean, you spend a lot of time in a car, and it's very annoying because you're trying to get from A to B as fast as possible. But what if you just enjoyed being in that journey from A to B? And walking or driving is great. Okay, so the purpose is to be in the present moment, aware of our breathing and of our walking, to enjoy every step. Therefore, we have to shake off all worries and anxieties, not thinking of the future, not thinking of the past, just enjoying the present moment. We can take the hand of a child as we do it. We walk, make steps as if we are the happiest person on earth. And there's like a different kind of feeling to that walking versus I'm trying to get where I'm going as fast as possible and I'm going to elbow everybody who's in my way. Although we walk all the time, our walking is usually more like running. When we walk like that, we print anxiety and sorrow on the earth. Yeah. We have to walk in a way that we only print peace and serenity on the earth. We can all do this, provided that we want it very much. Any child can do it. If we can take one step like this, we can take 2, 3, 4, and 5. When we are able to take one step peacefully and happily, we are working for the cause of peace and happiness for the whole of humankind. Walking meditation is a wonderful practice. So I know you guys have done some Tai Chi, and the idea is basically the same thing, right? Whether I'm actually doing a posture or I'm just walking with the same kind of quality to my movement, at some point, it might even be in this, you know what, I'm not going to give it away. Let's not skip ahead. So you get the idea of really just being in the present with each step. When we do walking meditation outside, we walk a little slower than our normal pace, and we coordinate our breathing with our steps. For example, we may take 3 steps with each in-breath and 3 steps with each out-breath. So we can say in, out, out, out. In is to help us identify the in-breath. Every time we call something by its name, we make it more real, just like saying the name of a friend. So if your lungs want 4 steps instead of 3, please give them 4 steps. If you only want 2 steps, give them 2. The length of your in-breath and out-breath do not have to be the same. For example, you can take 3 steps with inhale and 4 steps with the exhale. If you feel happy and peaceful and joyful while you are walking, you are practicing correctly. Be aware of the contact between your feet and the earth. Yeah, this is it. Walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. I love that. So it's, you know, we have a tendency to stomp, especially when we are in a hurry, but you're kissing the earth with your feet. And you can, you know, make that mean whatever you want it to mean, but there's a different feel from that than stomping. You're not walking like you're smashing the earth with your feet. We have caused a lot of damage to the earth. Now it is time for us to take good care of her. We bring our peace and calm to the surface of the earth and share the lesson of love. We walk in that spirit. From time to time, when we see something beautiful, we may want to stop and look at it. Okay, a tree of flowers, some children playing. As we look, we continue to follow our breathing, lest we lose the beautiful flower and get caught up in our thoughts. When we want to resume walking, we just start again. Each step we take will create a cool breeze, refreshing our body and mind. Each step makes a flower bloom under our feet. We can do it only if we do not think of the future or past, and if we know that life can only be found in the present moment. Yeah, this is a samurai saying, there's surely nothing more important than the present moment, or there's surely no higher purpose than the present moment, and that's great, absolutely. The samurai were always practicing to be ready for death, because you're a warrior, it can come at any moment, and that makes you not hesitate on the battlefield. I hope for all of us we're not that close. We're not just, you know, 1 step away or 1 day away from it. But if we live in that way with that understanding that it could come at any time, then every moment is precious. Every step is an opportunity to just be totally present. And if you're really digging in, not literally digging in, but you're digging in with your mind and your presence, each step or each breath is like in an eternity. It's like an entire lifetime that you're living in that moment. The next one is flowers and garbage. Defiled or immaculate, dirty or pure. These are concepts we form in our mind. A beautiful rose we have just cut and placed in our vase is pure. It smells so good, so fresh. A garbage can is the opposite. It smells horrible and it is filled with rotten things. But that is only when we look on the surface. If we look more deeply, we will see that in just 5 or 6 days, the rose will become part of the garbage. We do not need to wait 5 days to see it. If we just look at the rose and we look deeply, we can see it now. And if we look at the garbage can, we see that in a few months, its contents can be transformed into lovely vegetables. You like to compost at home, right? I mean, I think it would take me a couple of years to turn trash into vegetables, but it can happen. And even a rose. If you're a good organic gardener, looking at a rose, you can see the garbage. And looking at the garbage, you can see a rose. Roses and garbage inter-are. Without a rose, we cannot have garbage, and without garbage, we cannot have a rose. They need each other very much. The rose and the garbage are equal. The garbage is just as precious as the rose. If we look deeply at the concepts of defilement and immaculateness, we return to the notion of interbeing. So the part right before this is called interbeing, and it's all about this basic idea. If you are a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow, and without trees, we cannot make paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If the cloud is not here, the sheet of paper cannot be here either. So we can say that the cloud and the paper inter-are. Interbeing is a word that is not in the dictionary yet, but if we combine the prefix inter with the verb to be, we have a new verb, interbe. So if we look at this sheet of paper even more deeply, we can see the sunshine in it. Without sunshine, the forest cannot grow. In fact, nothing can grow without sunshine. And so we know that the sunshine is also in this sheet of paper. The paper and the sunshine inter-are. And if we continue to look, we see the logger who cut the tree, who brought it to the mill to be transformed into paper. And we see wheat. We know that the logger cannot exist without his daily bread, and therefore the wheat that became his bread is also in this sheet of paper. The logger's father and mother are in it too. When we look at it in this way, we can see that without all of these things, this sheet of paper cannot exist. Looking even more deeply, we can see ourselves in this sheet of paper too. This is not difficult to see, because when we look at a sheet of paper, it is also part of our perception. Your mind is in here, and mine is also. So we can say that everything in here is with this sheet of paper. Yes, we cannot point out one thing that is not here. Time, space, the earth, the rain, the minerals, the soil, the sunshine, the cloud, the river, the heat, everything coexists within this sheet of paper. That is why I think the word interbe should be in the dictionary. He's really trying to get this in the dictionary. To be is to interbe. We cannot just be by ourselves alone. We have to interbe with everything, with every other. This sheet of paper is because everything else is. So suppose we try to return one of the elements to its source. Suppose we return the sunshine to the sun. Do you think this sheet of paper will be possible? No. Not without sunshine, nothing can be. And we've returned the logger to his mother, then we have no sheet of paper either. The fact is that this sheet of paper is made up of only of non-paper elements. And if we return these non-paper elements to their sources, there can be no paper at all. Without non-paper elements like mind, logger, sunshine, and so on, there's no paper. As thin as this sheet of paper is, it contains everything in the universe in it. So this is a reminder that even if you can't walk out and be in nature, which is really better, there's nature in everything in a piece of paper, in every breath that you take, in everybody that you see. And while it will probably have a more profound experience on us to actually be out in nature and be in that silence and all of it, we want to try to take all of that in and kind of show the same respect for everything that we encounter throughout the day. And just having that respect and that recognition that it's all kind of contained, all of being is contained within every other being, then it'll bring you kind of more fully into the moment. So the last part of this, the river. Once upon a time, this is a story, there was a beautiful river, finding her way among the hills, forests, and meadows. She began by being a joyful stream of water, a spring always dancing and singing as she ran down from the top of the mountain. She was very young at this time, and she came to the lowland. She slowed down. She was thinking about going to the ocean. As she grew up, she learned to look beautiful, winding gracefully among the hills and meadows. One day, she noticed the clouds within herself. Clouds of all sorts of colors and forms. She did nothing during these days but chase after clouds. She wanted to possess a cloud, to have one for herself. But clouds float and travel in the sky, and they are always changing their form. Sometimes they look like an overcoat, sometimes like a horse. Because of the nature of impermanence within the clouds, the river suffered very much. Her pleasure, her joy had become just chasing after clouds, one after another. But despair, anger, and hatred became her life. It's quite the dramatic turn for this. But that's what happens when you're chasing after impermanent things. Then one day, a strong wind came and blew away all the clouds in the sky. The sky became completely empty. Our river thought that life was not worth living, for there were no longer any clouds to chase after. She wanted to die. If there are no clouds, why should I be alive? But how can a river take her own life? That night, the river had the opportunity to go back to herself for the first time. She had been running for so long after something outside of herself that she had never seen herself. That night was the first opportunity for her to hear her own crying, the sounds of water crashing against the banks of the river. Because she was able to listen to her own voice, she discovered something quite important. She realized that what she had been looking for was already in herself. She found out the clouds are nothing but water. Clouds are born from water and will return to water. And she found that she herself is also water. The next morning, when the sun was in the sky, she discovered something beautiful. She saw the blue sky for the first time. She had never noticed it before. She had only been interested in the clouds, and she had missed seeing the sky, which was the home of all the clouds. Clouds are impermanent, but the sky is stable. She realized that the immense sky had been within her heart since the very beginning. This great insight brought her peace and happiness. As she saw the vast, wonderful blue sky, she knew that her peace and stability would never be lost again. That afternoon, the clouds returned, but this time she did not want to possess any of them. She could see the beauty of each cloud, and she was able to welcome all of them. When a cloud came by, she would greet him or her with loving kindness. When that cloud wanted to go away, she would wave to him or her happily and with loving kindness. I don't know how a river waves, but use your imagination. She realized that all clouds are her. She did not have to choose between the clouds and herself. Peace and harmony existed between her and the clouds. That evening, something wonderful happened. When she opened her heart completely to the evening sky, she received the image of the full moon, beautiful, round, like a jewel within herself. She had never imagined that she could receive such a beautiful image. There's a very beautiful poem in Chinese. The fresh and beautiful moon is traveling in the utmost empty sky. When the mind rivers of living beings are free, that image of the beautiful moon will reflect in each of us. That was the mind of the river at the moment. She received the image of the beautiful moon within her heart, and water, clouds, and moon took each other's hands and practiced walking meditation slowly, slowly to the ocean. There's nothing to chase after. We can go back to ourselves, enjoy our breathing, our smiling, ourselves, and our beautiful environment. And that's it. So if you find yourself out in nature, it's a good reminder that all of this drama that we're chasing after is impermanent as a cloud. And it's really tempting to try to hold on to the drama, to chase after it. It's really tempting to chase after, the next job, the next car, the next whatever. But ultimately, all of that will disappear, and then we will be left with ourselves. But it's not lonely, because within all of us is everybody else and everything else. So I got 3 more short ones. If you have not read the Tao Te Ching, you should. Now, this version of it is absolutely beautiful, and it's the last one we have left because they don't sell it anymore, but it's awesome. It's got these beautiful pictures, and I'll show you guys. So I'm going to start with part 1. This is by Lao Tzu, and this is like the Taoist Bible, essentially. It's very short, though, much shorter than the Bible. So this is the 2nd chapter. And this is the picture that goes along with it. It's a feather. Under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good only because there is evil. Therefore, having and not having arise together. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow each other. Therefore, the wise go about doing nothing, teaching no talking. The 10,000 things rise and fall without cease, creating yet not possessing, working yet not taking credit. Work is done, then forgotten. Therefore, it lasts forever. So this is the same basic concept as the flower and the garbage, right? These opposites, these contrasting things, these paradoxes. One cannot exist without the other. And this is the quintessential nature of nature in our existence. And the 10,000 things are like the clouds passing us in the sky. The 10,000 things are like all the distractions in life in the world. And they do rise and fall without cease. So you may as well just let them go. The next one is chapter 8. This is a beautiful picture of a waterfall and a sky. The highest good is like water. Water gives life to the 10,000 things and does not strive. It flows in places people reject, and so is like the Tao. In dwelling, be close to the land. In meditation, go deep in the heart. In dealing with others, be gentle and kind. In speech, be true. In ruling, be just. In business, be competent. In action, watch the timing. No fight, no blame. So, water, they say this is the highest element, and it is humble. It travels down and kind of humbles itself. The best places in my experience in nature are something that has to do with water. The ocean's beautiful. I don't get in it because it's way too cold for me. I don't really get in the stream either, but it's nice to hear the sounds of water passing by. If you are, if you're into Bruce Lee, you'll hear him talk all the time about being like water, and you get the idea that the water fills up any shape that it's poured into. Bruce Lee liked to say that it can crash, but it can flow. And water, when it's flowing down in the river, it doesn't go up to a giant rock and then just stop. It flows around it, and it doesn't have to think about it. It just automatically flows. This is the way that we want our minds to be in meditation. When we arrive at some kind of an obstacle in our mind, a thought, it's tempting to resist. It's tempting to try to push it out of the way. It's not the natural way. The natural way is to just kind of flow around it, to let it go and to come back to this breath. And the last one, the moon. It's tiny, but it's up there. 16, empty yourself of everything. Let the mind become still. The 10,000 things rise and fall while the self watches their return. They grow and flourish and then return to the source. Returning to the source is stillness, which is the way of nature. The way of nature is unchanging. Knowing constancy is insight. Not knowing constancy leads to disaster. Knowing constancy, the mind is open. With an open mind, you will be open-hearted. Being open-hearted, you will act royally. Being royal, you will attain the divine. Being divine, you will be at one with the Tao. Being at one with the Tao is eternal. And though the body dies, the Tao will never pass away. So that's a good one to lead us into our meditation. Meditating anywhere is wonderful. This is a quiet enough, nice spot to do it, but go meditate in nature at some point this week. And even if it's just 5 minutes, kind of use that opportunity to be in the silence and recognize that there will be thoughts. One of the best stories about meditation was this monk went to the senior monk, the head monk, in his monastery and said, I'm having a hard time stilling my mind in meditation. And so the head monk said, I'm going to take you to my favorite place to meditate tomorrow. Meet me at dawn outside the monastery. And so the young monk met the old monk, and they started walking down. And the young monk thought, oh, we're going to go meditate in the mountains. We'll find a cave and be surrounded by snow, and that's going to be all quiet and peaceful. But no, they kept walking, and they walked through the woods in the valley, and the monk thought, we're going to find a babbling brook to meditate next to, and the sounds of nature will soothe my mind. And they kept walking, and they walked into town, and they sat in the busiest corner of the marketplace, and there are people bumping into each other and yelling across the way, and it's very noisy and it's very distracting. And it might be like that in nature, it might be like that, for certain it will be like that in your mind. But this is kind of the lesson here, is no matter the environment, you have your external environment and you have internal environment. And we want to be able to have that stillness and that quiet within us. And when we can't find it, then just sit and find where you can. Sit comfortably. You can go off to the side if you want to sit, Heather. So I'll go over some basic ideas for posture. To be able to sit still for a decently long period of time is important. When we sit and are still, it's kind of like you're a glass of water. You scoop up a glass of water from a pond, and there's all this junk floating around. But if you let it sit for long enough, all of that silt and stuff just kind of floats down to the bottom, and you end up with just a crystal clear glass of water. And so when we sit, try to be as still as possible. Every time you move, it's kind of like shaking up that water again. So when we sit with the knees even with or below the hips. If your knees are sticking up too high, then you're going to start to fall asleep with your legs. If you can sit cross-legged comfortably, do it, but just don't let your knees stick up too much. Your spine is straight, so roll the shoulders back and relax. Your chin is parallel to the ground, and your hands are here upturned at the juncture between the abdomen and the thighs, basically in front of the hips. You can have your hands together or you can have them separate, but you don't want to have them sliding down. So try to keep them here in a nice, comfortable position. Close eyes. Relax. Watch the breath. Let go of all thoughts, worries, and cares. Make sure you have your eyes slightly upturned to the point between your eyebrows. This will help you not fall asleep. And when your mind wanders, instead of resisting, you can just allow your mind to be like that river flowing around the thought and returning back to the breath. And do that as many times as you can. When you recognize that your mind has wandered, that's a good thing that you recognize it. Just bring your mind back to the present, back to this breath. And try to feel as if every time you bring your mind back to the breath, it's like returning home. If you're meditating on your own, you can return to the breath with an audible sigh, a comforting sigh that sounds like, if you're doing that in the dojo, please do it very quietly so you don't disturb everybody else's meditation. If you have a persistent thought, you can just label it in your mind as thought without judgment. And then again, flow right back around it to the next breath.